Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Market Match, where your startup actually fits by ThinkUp. We're going to give people a few more minutes to sign on. In the meantime, feel free to drop a message in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from, maybe a little bit about your startup idea, and we'll get started in just a moment or so. We're very excited to have you all here today. We've got a great panel, some great topics to cover. Excellent. I see people are joining. Welcome. Hello. Feel free to write in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Maybe a little bit about your startup idea. Give us some idea of where you're coming from. And we'll dive in just a minute. Excellent. I see more people joining. Hello, hello. Welcome to the Market Match. We're going to be beginning in just a moment or so. In the meantime, feel free to write in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from. We have participants from all around the world here during this session, so we'd love to hear where you're from, what you're working on, and we'll get started in just a minute. Excellent. All right, here we go. Welcome to the Market Match, where your startup actually fits by ThinkUp. I'm Chev. I'm part of the ThinkUp team, and I'm really excited to kick off today's session, the Market Match, where your startup actually fits. At ThinkUp, our mission is to help early-stage founders nail the fundamentals for business, from idea validation to fundraising strategy. And a big part of that is understanding your market. Today, we have two fantastic speakers joining me. First is Ohad, the founder and CEO of ThinkUp, and then we have Nir, ThinkUp's own head of investments and partnerships. Thank you both so much for being here. Ohad, why don't you kick us off and introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jeff. Hi, everyone. We're very happy that you joined us here today. I'm Ohad Shakir, the founder and CEO of ThinkUp. I've been an investor in many startups over the last couple of decades. I've had a few quite successes. I've invested over $50 million over the years, and I looked over a portfolio of a couple of hundreds of millions of dollars. In recent years, I've turned into an entrepreneur. I've been building my own two startups, and ThinkUp is the result of the pains, the challenges that I faced in my first startup. And I wanted to create a platform to help other founders to navigate the challenges of building a startup. And it's here for you. We are here for you to help you make your journey a bit more structured and maybe a bit easier. Hope you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ohad. Nir, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Chev. Hi, everyone. Over the past 18 years, I've worked across B2C, B2B startups, focusing on go-to-market strategy, business growth, and investment readiness. I founded companies, invested as both angel investor and VC fund through VC funds, and helped early-stage founders navigate their most critical challenges. At ThinkUp, my role is all about scouting, evaluating, and making investment decisions, always through an entrepreneurial lens. I'm here to help founders stay focused, feel supported, and get the clarity and tools they need to grow faster. Thank you very much for joining the session. I'm really looking forward to hearing your questions.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nir. So today's session will be divided into three main parts. First, why market definition is a top 3 success filter. We'll explore why your ability to define and size your market is critical and how getting it wrong can actually weaken your entire business case from the start. Second, the market is not just about size. Growth and specificity matter. We'll discuss why shouting a huge market size number isn't enough. Third, top down and bottom up, how to build a credible market estimate. Here, we'll get practical. We'll explain the two main approaches to calculating market size, top down and bottom up, and how to use both to make a convincing, credible case. By the end of this session, you should have a clear idea of how to define your market in a way that resonates with investors and guides your strategy. After that, we'll open it up to your questions. I want to point out at this point that at the bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A box. That box is a great place for you to ask your questions throughout this entire webinar, At the end, we'll go over and get through as many as we can. I'll keep reminding you, but if anything comes up that you have a question about, feel free to drop it in the Q&A box. Now, before we jump into the discussion and those 3 agenda items, let's start with a quick poll to get a gauge on how everyone's thinking and where everyone's coming from. On a scale of 1 to 5, how confident are you that you've nailed your startup's market definition? You should see the poll pop up on your screen in just a few moments. I hope. We'll give it a minute. All right, looks like we have a small technical issue here. So please write in the chat, let us know. On a scale of 1 to 5, how confident are you that you've nailed your startup's market definition? Do you know your market? Let us know in the chat. Here we go. Sorry about the delay there. The confidence barometer. So we'll give you a minute to mark from 1 to 5. Do you know where your startup fits in your market? Do you know your market definition? All right, let's see the results. All right, it's a pretty wide split. It seems most of the responses are number 3 in the middle, which is right, you're in the perfect spot, right where you should be right now. Hopefully we'll be able to provide some value, and at the end of this session, you'll know how to get to a 5. So let's start with our first agenda item, why market definition matters. This is the big picture. We often hear that market size is a key filter. Nir, can you walk us through the investor's lens here?
Definitely, Chef. Thanks. So from the investor side, market size is so critical. Small stagnant market is one of the top reasons investors will pass away. Even with a great team or product, if the opportunity is limited, the startup can't scale to the outcomes investors seek. Now, here are some common numbers you should be aware of. Investors are looking for potential 10 times, 50 times, or even 100 times returns. That's only possible if the market is big and expanding. So defining the market clearly and showing it is large enough is crucial. It is often considered, or I consider it as one of the top 3 things investors looking for. 3 T's: TAM, total addressable market, the team, and obviously the TAM, the tech, because the TAM signals the upper limit of your startup potential.
That makes a lot of sense, Nir. So what you're saying is that if the pie is too small, even a great team can only bake a small cake, so to speak. Ohad, what do you see? Do founders usually get this?
Well, often not. I see quite many founders, usually first-time founders, that perhaps they grab the first market report they see out there on Google, and they tend to present very large numbers, even huge, full industries. Everyone needs transportation, so they show the entire mobility space, $1 trillion as their market size, and that could raise a red flag for me. Sometimes it says that it shows to me that the entrepreneur is not focused enough, that the market size that it shows is not aligned with his or her solution. Now, on the other hand, sometimes they get it a bit too narrow. It's like they target people, male in their mid-30s, playing guitars in Texas. So, if that's too narrow, if that's a niche market, the opportunity is not big enough and investors wouldn't appreciate it. So you're trying to go for a big market, but you have to explain it, you have to rationalize it, and make sure that your market is aligned with your solution, not too broad.
Excellent. Thank you, Ohad. So founders, the takeaway here is that you want to define a market specific to your solution, yet large enough to count. If you can't convince yourself that there's a meaningful opportunity, you won't be able to convince investors.
Exactly. And here, let me give you a rule of thumb. So VC want to see a potential for $1 billion outcome. That usually means that your TAM should be several billions. They probably ask, if you capture 5 or 10% of the market, could this be a 100 million a year business? If yes, that support what VC funds aim for. If your total market is only 100 million, even owning all of it may not make you venture scale. Now, it could still be a good business, a great business, just not the one that fits the VC model. And it is important to say that it's not just impressing investors here. Knowing the market size and the dynamic there is also crucial for you as, as a founder to plan properly. It influences your product roadmap, your go-to-market strategy, and how aggressive you should be. So it's really foundational, not just about the pitch.
Awesome. Thank you, Nir. I want to remind everyone that if you have any questions about anything we've discussed so far about why market definition matters, to add your questions in the Q&A box, and we will go over all of them at the end of this session. Now let's move on to our next topic. TAM is not just about size. We've seen those pitch decks with massive numbers like $50 billion TAM in big bold font, and it's almost a cliche at this point. Ohad, how do you react when you see a huge TAM number like that? Is bigger always better?
No, so definitely not. Sometimes it raises red flags. It shows that the entrepreneur doesn't understand exactly his or her market. For example, if someone is developing a software to plan how to build renewable energy factories or how to build renewable energy projects, it cannot show that the entire renewable energy market is market size because he's just developing the software for it. So the entrepreneur has to be very focused. He has to show which slice of the pie, which slice of that market applies to him or to her specific solution. Now, there are two other issues to discuss, two other points to consider. First of all, it's not just about the market size, not just about the TAM, it's also about the growth rate. So $1 billion market growing at 10, 20% per year is much different and much more exciting than a $1 billion market that is shrinking by 10 to 15% every year. A shrinking market could be saturated, could be too mature. And when investors are looking 5 to 10 years from now, also you as entrepreneurs, that market can just simply almost disappear. So we want to look at not only the size of the market, but also at its growth rate, annual growth rate. Now, the third thing is about relevance. Okay, what is relevance to you? So it's like a storyline. You're starting with the total addressable market. Theoretically, if you would own and address the entire market, how much could you, how much revenue could you generate? And then we drive down the SAM, the serviceable addressable market, more specific segments and geographies that you can address, that you're planning to address, maybe more specific target audiences. And lastly, there's the SOM, the serviceable obtainable market. You need to estimate roughly how much market share can you grab out of that SOM. Would it be 5%, 10%? Do you think you can dominate the market by 30%? Just try and show a credible plan that shows where you're going to get 5, 10 years from now. That's the story you should be telling.
Interesting, Ohad. You're saying that growth and relevance of a market are added to its size definition.
Yeah.
Nir, do you have an example to kind of illustrate this point?
Sure. Let's say that an edtech startup helped Latin Americans professionals improve their spoken English for remote workers. Now, instead of choosing a huge TAM, saying everyone learning English globally is your TAM, it's around 1.7 billion people, or I don't know, 150 billion dollars a year. Here's a tighter breakdown. So the TAM is about focusing on adult English learners in Latin America. Let's say it's 80 million people, approximately $5 billion spent a year. Now, the SAM would be narrowing it down to working professionals, maybe in major cities in the Latin America, maybe with internet access or willingness to pay, and that will bring you to 12 million users, approximately 1.2, 1.3 billion annually. Then the sum, based on the actual reach and pricing projection, maybe in 3 years, we aim for 120,000 users paying $15 a month. That brings it to 65 million a year. Now, that is a credible path. It frames the opportunity. It keeping it grounded. Going from TAM to SAM to SUM show that you are focused and understand the scale. And as said before, the mindset also helps with product, go-to-market, and pricing. Not just about the pitch. It's about strategy.
And I assume founders should back up their numbers with sources, right? Don't just throw figures out there.
Yeah, always cite sources. If you say 140 billion TAM, investor will ask according to whom. So always add a note on the slide, like source World Bank 2024, or the research name, say Gartner 2025. That builds trust. It shows you're prepared and not just guessing. Even if exact numbers are not there, doesn't exist, especially in new market, triangulate. Use related stats to make a logical case. For example, 100 people pay $500 a year on that adjacent solution. Okay? The goal is to show thinking and effort.
Excellent. So the key takeaway here is that TAM is not just about size. Show growth, define your specific market, and cite reliable sources. And that's how you make it believable. If you have any questions about this very complex diagram and subject matter, ask away, drop your questions in the question and answer box, and we will get to them all at the end of this session. Now, our next topic is about top-down and bottom-up, how to build a credible market estimate. We've talked about what market to define. Now let's talk about how to estimate it. There are different methods, but not all are equally persuasive, so you want to find the one that's right for you. Let's dive into the top-down and bottom-up approaches. Ohad, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, absolutely, sure. So the top-down is about looking at broad market estimates and then narrowing it down. So for example, if we're targeting the productivity software market, it could be around roughly around $80 billion, but we might be focused on the US geography-wise and freelancers. Maybe we are developing productivity software for freelancer in the US. So that could mean a bit narrower market of $8 billion. That's the top-down approach. It's one approach to understand roughly the size of your opportunity. Now, there's also the bottom-up approach. You need to ask yourself two questions. Number one, how many customers, potential customer will you have? And the other one is how much each of them will be willing to pay annually. Multiply those two numbers and you get your market size, a good estimate, a good, clear, specific estimate of your market size. Let's take an example. Let's say you're developing an operational platform for healthcare practitioners, maybe in the US, dietitians, health coach, and therapists. And let's say there are 2 million of those 2 million potential customers, and let's say they would be willing to pay $600 per month for your software. That would be $7,000 per annum, approximately. Multiply those two figures, and you get to a market size of over $14 billion. Okay, so that would give you a credible, very specific figure of your market opportunity. And then you want to try and match those two.
Wow, thank you. This is a really cool equation we're looking at here. Nir, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, so just as I just said, the best founders combine those both. So start with the bottom up, define your unit of measure, either customers, transactions, or other specific units relevant to your specific case, and the pricing, of course, to build a strong logical estimate. Then cross-check it with top down to validate it against industry data. So if your bottom up shows $8 billion in the US, but the reports say that the total market is only 2 billion, you have a problem. But if your 8 billion fits within 8 or 10 or 12 billion industry, that adds confidence. And remember, you don't need to say it's 100 billion or 1 trillion market to stand out. An 8 billion US market where you can realistically grow 50 or 100 million business is highly relevant for early stage investors.
Excellent, Nir. Thank you. So the takeaway here is to use both the top-down and bottom-up methods to build a credible market estimate. Make your math visible, your assumptions clear, and your story anchored in real customer behavior and pricing. Now, these are a lot of big numbers we're throwing out here. Not all of us majored in economics. Feel free to drop your questions in the question and answer box. And we're going to move actually right now to our Q&A session and start answering the many, many questions that have been asked here. So here we go. While we're answering these questions, you can feel free to keep on asking and we'll get to as many as we can. So Nir and Ohad, let's get started with some relevant questions about this topic. Our first question is from Anna. What if my startup is so new that we're essentially creating a new market? How do I estimate my market then?
Yeah, Ohad, you want to start or should I?
Feel free.
All right. So I think we mentioned it before. Sometimes, especially in new markets, there are no reports or data, researches and data to align your stats on. So the best way is to consider the persona that you're maybe trying to sell to, and then consider, say, if they have budget for similar product like yours, okay? Or which budget would it be on their side, or to consider against. And this is exactly the kind of thinking. And then by showing that they are willing to pay X amount of dollars a year or a month versus your solution as an adjusting solution, that could bring you to a reasonable assumptions that would convince investors.
Excellent. Thank you, Nir.
Yeah, I think so. The bottom-up here approach would be very relevant.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you, Ohad. Okay, our next question. Do you have any tips on where to find reliable data for market sizing? How do I know which sources to trust? Ohad, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, well, obviously, we offer that on our platform. And, all of the large language models can help you, ChatGPT, Gemini, you can look it up on Google. They will all reference you to market research reports that other well-known companies have issued. Also, you can register to newsletters in your specific industry. They will probably gather data about your industry.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
If I may add, it is important to understand which one is a credible source to rely on versus all the data that is out there on the internet or whatever, and sometimes even the models, the language models get you to specific sources that are not necessarily the right source to support your claims. So you need to be aware of who you cite. Now there are the major ones like Gartner and Statista and World Bank, and they have researchers for different verticals and industries. But you need to make sure that you rely yourself on such sources and not necessarily a singular website out there that cites something that is not backed by a solid resource.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Our next question. Can you explain again the difference between TAM, SAM, and SUM for a newbie to the industry?
Sure, I'll start. So the total addressable market is basically your, I would say, your vision in a way, like the futuristic potential or market that you can in your vision can capture and may be relevant to the solution that you provide. Okay. Now the SAM is the serviceable addressable market, and this is what you actually going to build in the nearest future. Okay. And which markets or geographies or capabilities that are relevant to specific market you may actually reach at a certain point of time. That will be your serviceable market. And then the sum is really it really ties to your growth planning. Okay, so for example, if you plan to grow, your number of customers is going to grow from, the first one in a few months from now, and then you're going to have 100 and then 1,000 clients. Okay, and then maybe more. Okay, that's a plan that's going to get you revenues, right? And if you sum this revenue, okay, that shows you the sum. Okay, your obtainable market, how much you're going to obtain in, say, 3 to 5 years. So you can't obtain all the serviceable market. You're going to obtain a chunk of it. So it's usually part of the serviceable market. I hope that was clear enough.
Yeah, that was great. Ohad, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think in TAM, you can, if you're providing software for the banking industry, the TAM could be maybe the entire software for the banking industry, but then again, your SAM, your addressable market, could be software just for specific departments in the bank or for banks of a certain size. So you're just narrowing down to something that is more and more specific to your solution.
Excellent. Okay, thank you so much. Let's do just 2 more questions. Here we have a question. How do I handle it if an investor disagrees with my market assumption during a meeting?
Great question. Yeah. So we kind of shifting a bit from market analysis and market estimation and math to investor meeting dynamics in a way. And one thing you don't want to do is to confront or argue with the investor. You need to find a way, and it's a bit of an art and practice to back your statements and your slide with real numbers and to show that you prepared yourself and you are solid behind your numbers. Okay, that is important. Now that requires planning and practice and researching before meeting investors. Now, if you back yourself with credible resources, okay, either by knowing the market or researches, etc., or you interviewed people, or you did you research your own, then it would be much harder for the investor to confront you. But then again, that happens, and you still don't want to confront so much. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks. Ohad, do you have any insight there?
Yeah, the big question is why is there a disagreement? I mean, if the investor comes up with, can he back his arguments, his analysis? What does he base his analysis on what? So, if he's wrong, maybe if you think he's wrong, maybe you can show up with some figures that shows different assumptions. Maybe you're making an assumption or an analysis on different facts. so you have to check your facts. And as Nir said, the most important thing is not to get into any argument, but try in a polite way maybe to look again into the figures. Maybe you're going to learn something new. Maybe the investor is right. Maybe there's an aspect, an angle that you haven't thought of. But sometimes, there could be disagreements, and everyone has his own view. So sometimes that could happen as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Good advice in general.
Jeff, can I add another
Of course.
another layer? So one thing you should do is kind of prepare not only for the meeting, but also map your investor that you meet. Okay, some investors are active in the space that you are, planning to penetrate, and they invested already in a few companies, and they know the space. Okay, if they confront your numbers, you should get back to the drawing table and kind of reassess your assumptions versus what you heard during the meeting. Now, you don't necessarily always meet only these kind of investors. Okay, sometimes you meet, investors that are more generalist, they agnostic in terms of the verticals that they and the companies that they invest in, and if they argue with you, take it with a grain of salt.
Excellent. Yeah, as you said, that's good advice in general for investor meetings, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I see that we have a few questions here about specific startups and specific industries. I invite you to please reach out to us directly, to Nir and Ohad, and we'll share our contact information in just a second. You can set up a meeting and go over your particular cases. I see EdTech, I see digital advertising. There's a lot of really interesting conversations to be had here. Okay, we're gonna wrap up now. But before we do, let's go over a quick recap of today's key points. So first of all, our first takeaway, define a market specific to your solution, yet large enough to count. Second, TAM is not just about size. Show growth, define your specific market, and cite reliable sources. And lastly, use both top-down and bottom-up approaches to build a credible market estimate. Keep these takeaways in mind as you refine your pitches and your strategies. And as we conclude, I want to give Nir a moment to explain how a ThinkUp can help you in this very confusing topic on this journey of market definition and sizing.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks. So at ThinkUp, we help founders tackle market sizing, not just for pitch decks, but as part of building a strong go-to-market strategy. Inside the platform, you'll find a dedicated market overview step with guided top-down and bottom-up flows. You'll get structured tasks and AI-driven suggestions based on your specific case, industry, and business type. You're not starting from scratch. We surfaced relevant reports and data sources and tailor guidance for all different sectors, whether it's B2B SaaS, EdTech, health tech, you name it, specific to you. And if you hit a wall, our mentors are here to challenge your assumptions and ensure that your numbers align with expectations. Whether you're drafting your first TAM slide or refining your go-to-market model, you're not alone. We support you throughout, so you can clearly explain the market you're going after and how you grow it into it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nir. I think this kind of support is really important, especially in this topic, because it's so confusing and can be really daunting for founders, especially first-time founders. Before we sign off, I'd love to get a final quick thought from you, Ohad. Do you have any last pieces of advice for founders who are working on their market definition right now?
Yeah, sure. So just like many other tasks along your journey, this is not a one-time task. It's a repetitive, iterative. It's a process, an ongoing process. Keep revisiting market reports, trends in your market. Maybe you find that the market has expanded or shrunk since you last visited it. Maybe the willingness to pay off your customers has changed. Keep interviewing customers. Maybe find new segments of the market that you weren't aware of, or maybe you didn't find attractive. Maybe that will increase your TAM. So keep revisiting it and be prepared, also for the investor meetings. Make sure you know all the facts, the trends, the sizes of the markets, of different segments, and always keep refining it.
Amazing. Excellent advice. Definitely underscores how important it is that defining where your startup fits is a dynamic journey, not just a one-time task. Well, we're at the end of our time here, and this has been really an incredibly enlightening webinar. So thank you so much to Nir and Ohad. Thank you for sharing your insights and your experiences. I'm sure that everyone is walking away with at least a lot more ideas of where they need to do their research and how they need to define their market. And I wanted to share that for everyone listening, we'll be sending out a follow-up email with the recording of this webinar and a summary of the takeaways, obviously, so keep an eye out for that. Our next ThinkUp webinar will be in a few weeks. The topic and date still to be announced, so follow us on LinkedIn and check your email. You should see an invite there in the coming weeks. And lastly, you're all eligible for a free mentorship session. The details will be sent by email. So for all of you who ask questions that were a little more specific or a little more personalized, I definitely encourage you to sign up for that. And lastly, sign up for our platform. Check us out. It's a great resource, especially if you're in this step of your startup journey. So thank you again for spending your time with us today at the Market Match, where your startup actually fits. Go out there, size your markets confidently, and as always, ThinkUp is here to help you every step of the way. Have a great day.
Thank you, Chef. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.